have passed, behold, all things are new. Whom the Son set free is truly free indeed. What I'm going through is working out for me. Oh, everybody say here, if a man be in Christ, he is a new creation. All things have passed, behold, all things are new. Whom the Son set free is truly free indeed. What I'm going through is working out for me. Know that till above, not beneath, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. He's turning around, I will be the head, I will be the head, and not the tail. Above and not beneath, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. He's turning around for me. I see everything turning around for my good. It's turning around for my good. Turning around for my good. It's working in my favor. Turning around for my good. Oh, I see everything turning around for my good. Turning around for my good. Yeah, turning around for my good. Yeah, turning around. Let's sing. I will be the head. I will be the head, not the tail. Above, not beneath, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. Yeah. I will be the head, I will be the head, not the tail. Above and not beneath, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. Yeah. Oh, I see everything turning around for my good. It's turning around for my good. Turning around, yeah. Turning around for my good. It's working in your favor. Turning around for my good. Oh, I see everything turning around for my good. It's turning around for my good. Turning around, yeah. Turning around for my good. It's working in your favor. Turning around for my good. Jehovah, turn my life around. Yes. Jehovah, turn my life around. Everybody say, it's a way when there is no way. Jehovah has the final say. Jehovah, turn my life around. Hey, Jehovah, turn my life around. Everybody say, it's a way when there is no way. Jehovah has the final say. I say who has the final say? Jehovah has the final say. Oh, who has the final say? Jehovah has the final say. Jehovah turned my life around. He turned my life around. Everybody say, it's a way when there is no way. Jehovah has the final say. Jehovah turned my life around. Jehovah turned my life around. Everybody say, it's a way where there is no way. Jehovah has the final say. I say who has the final say? Jehovah, Jehovah, Jehovah has the final say. I say who has the final say? Jehovah, Jehovah, Jehovah has the final say. Jehovah turn my life around. Jehovah turn my life. Yeah, He makes a way when there is no way. Jehovah the final say. Oh, happy you don't know say Jehovah na God. 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 Happy them not tell you. Happy you don't know I'm. Happy you don't know say Jehovah na God. Happy you don't know say Jehovah na God. Happy you don't know say Jehovah na God. Oh, happy you don't know say Jehovah na God. Happy you don't know say Jehovah na God. Oh, happy them not tell you Jehovah na God. Oh, happy you don't know say Jehovah na God. Oh, happy you don't know say Jehovah na God. Happy you don't know say Jehovah na God. Jehovah na God, Jehovah na God. Oh, happy you don't know say Jehovah na God.
Happy you don't know say Jehovah na God.
Hey, happy them not tell you Jehovah na God.
Happy you don't know say Jehovah na God.
Oh, happy you don't hear him Jehovah na God.
Happy you don't know say Jehovah na God.
Oh, Jehovah, 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 oh, Jehovah,
You are the most high.
oh, Jehovah,
You are the most high.
oh, Jehovah,
You are the most high.
Jehovah,
You are the most high God.
We know that hope is never lost, for there is still an empty grave. God, we believe no matter what, there is power in your name. So much power in your name. Move the immovable, break the unbreakable. God, we believe. God, we believe for it. From the impossible, we'll see your miracle. God, we believe. God, we believe for it. Oh, yeah. We believe you, Lord. Hey, you are the way when there seems to be no way. We trust in you, God, you have the final say. You are the way when there seems to be no way. Oh, we trust in you, God, you have the final say. Move the immovable, break the unbreakable. God, we believe. Hey, God, we believe for it. From the impossible, we'll see your miracle. God, we believe. God, we believe for it. Move the immovable, break the unbreakable. God, we believe you, Lord. God, we believe for it. From the impossible, we'll see your miracle. God, we believe. God, we believe for it. God, we believe. God, we believe for it. God, we believe. We believe for it.
Hallelujah. Amen. Indeed, we believe God for the miracles. He's a God who moves the immovable and breaks the things that seem to be against us. So this morning we lift up our hands in praise. Wherever you are, you want to thank God that He's able to move the things that are immovable in your life. And today, no matter how long that thing has stayed in your life, that negativity, reach out in faith and trust God. He's able to break the unbreakable and to move the immovable. What is it that you think cannot be done? What do you think? What is it that you think that there's no solution? We stretch our faith to a God who's able to do it all. And we believe God for it. And that's what we're here this morning. Praises to a God who can do all things exceeding abundantly above what we think of or ask. Hallelujah to your name. And so this morning we gather before your mighty presence, beseeching your grace and your mercy, that you who is able to do all things, you will perfect our lives. And above all, you'll be glorified in our lives. Our prayer is that Jesus will be revealed and Jesus will be glorified. Thank you. Amen. You may be seated. Welcome all of you to our second service for the day. Today, I'm sharing briefly with you as I continue the work of ministry, and I'm going to be speaking about Nehemiah. Nehemiah, the example of Nehemiah as a minister. Over the past few weeks, we have all looked at the work of the ministry and who qualifies to be called a minister. We have come to the conclusion that all of us are ordained ministers of the gospel. And there's a dispensation of the gospel that has been committed to us. We have looked at how the ministry works. Is there a divine pattern? Is there an approved way to do ministry? And we have seen how God looks for a man and sets him up. In Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 30, he says, "And I sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge, and stand in the gap before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none." You enter the system. Do a work. You've got to understand how the power of God works. Turn your Bible to Colossians chapter 4, verse 17, which has become our popular theme verse. Colossians chapter 4, verse 17. Shall we all read it together? 1, 2, go. "And say to Archippus, take heed to the ministry which thou hast received in the Lord, that thou fulfill it." Say to Archippus, be careful, be diligent, pay a lot of attention to the ministry you have received in the Lord and fulfill it. It means that God expects that you will fulfill your ministry. That is something that cannot be left undone. You cannot go through life and do everything, and the ministry that you have received of the Lord is undone. So we are continuing this morning, and I just want to set a little background again in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 8. Isaiah chapter 9, verse 8. It says, "The Lord sent a word into Jacob, and it had lightened." We're again seeing the prototype. Jacob is a person, Israel is a nation. Every time God intends to reach Israel, his strategy is to find a Jacob, so that what he intends to do in Israel will go through a Jacob. So every time you see a Jacob, you must begin to rejoice, because it is the starting point of God's miracle explosion. Can do all things. The Lord sent a word into Jacob, and it had lighted upon Israel. So it is important for you to understand. First, we identify a man of God abundantly who has been given a divine assignment and a vision. God has given him a message or a plan, like Abraham, to establish the beseeching your grace and your mercy. Noah, the man of God, to build an ark, who is able to lead his people out of a bondage. You will Nehemiah to build the broken walls of Jerusalem. He calls a Paul and sends him to the Gentiles, and he sends Jesus Christ to save mankind. So every time God identifies a man, he sends him out to do a work in his generation. And this man has a specific assignment in his generation. When God has sent a man, then it is up to us to receive him and commit to help him. Because God will deal with every generation according to their reception of the man of God. We read that in Luke chapter 13, that God sent prophets to Jerusalem. I was sending you prophets, but you killed them, you stoned them, you didn't mind them, you're indifferent to them. He says, how often did I want to gather you and help you, but you didn't allow me? Then he says, your house shall remain unto you desolate, until the time come when you shall say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. In John chapter 1, we understand how Jesus Christ came unto his own, but his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God. In Genesis chapter 12, we see the father of our faith, Abraham, Jesus, who is called out and sent to a people, and God says that them that bless you, I will bless, and them that curse you, I will curse. So it is our generation's duty to receive the people God sends into our lives. Then the third thing is that for those of us who have seen or are a part of the church, we have a duty to rally human and financial resources to help the man of God fulfill his assignment effectively. And in doing that, you must have the willingness to bury your own agenda. Thank you. So that you stand with the person God has sent. And so if you're a member of this church, I want to say it again. Your only assignment in this church is to help me fulfill the assignment God has given to me. Don't do anything that you think is a good idea. It is not your vision. The vision has been given to Jacob, and he lighteth upon Israel. The vision has been given to Noah. He will build the ark. The ark that you labor to help build will eventually save you. So you need to understand the divine pattern and be able to join a church and understand that you don't come with a different agenda, but you come with an agenda to help the man of God set in the body of Christ. How do you fulfill your ministry? We have looked at the unique ministry of helps and governments to help you support the vision. That there is one body, but many members. And each person has a unique role to play in the body. Every part or member of the body is vitally linked and supplies essential nutrients to other parts of the body. No part of the body is useless and is to be despised. We looked at the hair on your nose. Do you remember? And we went through the Bible. We looked at examples of Tychicus, Onesimus, Aristarchus, Marcus, Priscilla and Aquila, Epaphras, etc., who all understood their purpose and contributed their function and their ministry to support the work in their time. So the body ministry is essential so that there will be no schisms or lack or deficiency in the body. You have to learn to bury your own agenda beyond everything and help achieve a bigger dream. Use your skills, your opportunities, your abilities, your privileges to reveal Christ and to advance the kingdom. So we can talk of people like Esther. If you're an Esther, pay attention to your rising influence, because God has an assignment for you in the palace. And when you stand up, you will save the Jews. That may be your ministry. You don't have to necessarily come and stand behind a pulpit and preach like I'm preaching. I am performing mine. You must also find where God has placed you and reveal Christ and advance the kingdom. So if you're a lawyer, you are a member of a parliament, you may have the privilege to stand in a position and make sure you can pass laws that will protect the advancement of the kingdom. If you are a Daniel, you may not be a pastor standing behind a pulpit, but you can manifest an excellent spirit in a palace. Get the education you need to sit on boards of companies and stand up for Jesus when it matters. Stand in the palace and let God be known by your superior wisdom and your ability to solve complex problems. The burden of the Holy Ghost is to bring us into divine alignment with a divine purpose. That there will be a restructuring of His will and God's divine pattern in our lives. We can also mention other people in the Bible, like a woman called Dorcas, who the Bible says was full of good works. Pay a lot of attention. She never preached a sermon behind the pulpit. She didn't start a church. She didn't have ashes. But what did she do? In the church that she belonged to, she ministered to the widows. Because of her, many people came to church because she was fulfilling her ministry assignment. We have spoken of the example of a man like Nicodemus, who came to Jesus by night and brought 100 pounds of spices and anointed the body of Jesus Christ. We have also spoken about Joseph of Arimathea, who used his influence to enter into the palace, negotiate with Pilate, and bring the body of Jesus Christ down and put him in a grave. That's the only reason why these people are mentioned, because there was something specific that they also used their influence to achieve. This is the apostolic formation for a ministry that is divine. We don't just need pastors and preachers from the pulpit alone. So you can read about Mary. She never preached a sermon, but she raised up Jesus Christ. She gave up her womb to carry the Savior of the world and raised up Jesus Christ amid a lot of controversy. We can talk about Elijah, who stood up to evil rulers. What you need to do is to be able to find a parallel in Scripture that you can model after. Open you up to various dimensions personified by a person, so that by the guidance of the Holy Ghost, that cannot be left undone. Place you cannot go through life and do everything. We're talking about somebody like Epaphras in Colossians chapter 4, verse 12, who is one of us, always laboring for you in prayers. A church is more than just raising pastors and preachers, but it's a whole body of Christ. Some are visible, some are invincible, but there are other dimensions to the ministry beyond the pulpit. There are women, there are men, there are people who serve as elders, helps governors, businessmen financing the kingdom, and I just want to make sure that the kingdom advance with their opportunities, with their skill, with their privileges. So that idea that unless you are a pastor standing behind the pulpit, you are not part of the body or you are not important, is erroneous and must be discarded. Even if you are just
Isaiah chapter 9
and verse 8 is that you keep germs from entering into the nose. You are important. So find your place, find what you can do. You must never be in a church where your attitude is, I do nothing.
Isaiah.
It means you are either dead or you are detached from the body. Once you are a part of the body of Christ, there is a reason and there's a function. Your function may not be evident, but God has placed you there. That is why every little thing, a smile, somebody welcoming people to church, somebody calling people to come to church, somebody encouraging people with a word after church, is all part of a ministry you can develop and make sure that you add to the church. We can talk about Simon of Cyrene, whose only mention in the Bible is that he carried the cross of Jesus Christ. We can talk about the rich man who gave the tomb. We can talk about the woman who ministered to Jesus and the 12. We can speak about the man whose only mention is that he built a synagogue. We can speak about the ministry of Mary and Martha, who cooked for Jesus Christ. We can speak about Mary Magdalene, out of whom went out 7 devils. But she rose up and began to minister with Jesus Christ, and she was the first woman at the tomb. We need a woman like the woman at the well, who has had an encounter with Jesus Christ, runs back into the city and announces to the whole city that there's a man I've met who is different, and she's able to bring the whole city to Jesus. That's the only thing she did. She didn't start a church. She didn't preach another sermon.
The Lord sent a word,
a ministry
into Jacob.
Esther is in the palace and something is happening, but she stands up and she says, if I perish, I perish. And she speaks for the Jews, and immediately she saves the Jews. We can speak about people like Nehemiah, who is building the broken walls. So I start by reminding you of Colossians chapter 4, verse 17. Say to every church member, say to Archippus, now that you are born again, take heed to the ministry you have received in the Lord, that thou fulfill it. And when you stand in a place of position, a place of privilege, don't forget that there is a kingdom purpose and advancement. Don't become too big to serve now. Don't lose your service to God by an earthly position. There's a reason. In fact, Mordecai told Esther, who knows if you have come into the kingdom for such a time as this? Who knows? You are there and God has positioned you knowing that one day somebody will try to exterminate the Jews. But there's somebody
again seeing the prototype.
must speak up.
Jacob is a person. Israel is a nation. Every time God intends to reach Israel, his strategy is to find
not because they are bad people, but they forget that they have been placed in a position to use their influence for the gospel. So every time you see I've seen people, as they grow, they lose the ministry. But
you must begin to restretch our because it is the starting point of God in his generation.
Can reach
this man has a specific...
In the pulpit as a pastor, I can't reach them. You work in that place. You live in that community. They are your classmates. You can reach them. And that's how judgment is going to be. According to the place, your geographical location, and your influence, only you can reach. And so it is not everybody who's going to stand behind a pulpit and preach. But whether you are a doctor, you are a nurse, the revelation of the Father's love can manifest. And you can use what you have and the position and the privileges and the opportunities to advance the kingdom. On Tuesday, we looked at the template, which is like a model or a prototype or an example. Ministry is first a strong heart conviction and is driven from the inside to the outside. So ministry is not just what you do on the outside. There's a lot about how you think, what shapes you, what motivates you. That is what drives ministry. So you can find two people doing the same thing. One is ministry, the other is not. Because ministry will reveal the Father's love and advance
the kingdom. So the three essentials are the priority. Is it your priority? Seek ye first. What is the first thing on your agenda? Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Seek ye first. So I'm motivated by the priority of the gospel. It is foremost in my agenda that I want the kingdom of God to come. As I get this privilege, as I get this opportunity, may the kingdom of God come. The second thing is what motivates you. Are you looking for earthly fame? Are you looking for earthly applause? Or you want the Father to be revealed, the Father's love, and Jesus Christ glorified? So we learned in Colossians, whatever you do, do it heartily as unto the Lord, knowing that in the Lord you shall receive the reward of the inheritance. So you find two people singing. One is singing because I have a nice voice. The other is actually singing and ministering because I want Jesus to assignment. I want the kingdom to advance. So it is not what you are doing. The motivation and the priority is important. Why am I preaching today? Because I have a nice dress. I want everybody to see it. Or I've bought a new shoe. So when I'm walking, you say, oh, pastor has a new shoe. No. Those things can be the motivation for somebody else. But for me, the driving passion in his generation, I want to see Jesus Christ glorified. Then the third thing that is not seen but defines ministry is your sacrifice and your risks. What sacrifices and risks are you prepared when God has sent a man to achieve that? So we learn from the example of Esther. Esther said, if I perish, I perish. I'm going to place the kingdom first. My motivation is to see the advancement of the kingdom, and I'm prepared to take a risk to let that happen. So every time you see ministry, these three things will be there. Number one, there's the priority. Number two, there's the motivation. And number three, there is the sacrifice and the risks to make it happen. So today, we look at the example of Nehemiah, one of Israel's great leaders. And we look at firsthand the powerful story of the rebuilding of the ancient Jerusalem walls after the exile. And once again, we're going to see a divine pattern. A man of God who works with other people, rallying resources, both human and financial, to complete a divine assignment. Now listen carefully. Sometimes when a man of God is rallying people, there's a lot of people are not very sure. And sometimes in rallying people, you gather people who also have their own agenda, like an Abraham and a Lot. But what you need to understand is that whoever joins the man of God or you join a church, listen, your only agenda is that God has called a man for an assignment. The only thing is that I want to help this man fulfill his assignment. Every other thing you do, is non-scoring. So if you're a member of this church, you have to understand that your ministry in this church is to support and hold my hands like Aaron and Hur held up the hands of Moses. Whilst they were on the mountain holding up their hands, Joshua was winning the battle. But the battle was not actually being fought and won on the battlefield. It was being determined by the hands of Moses. So it's important. How do you hold up my hands? How do you strengthen me? How do you make it easy for the whole of Israel to win a warfare? So Noah is building an ark. You see, when you come, you don't go and build another ark. You contribute to building the ark. And it is that ark that you labor to build that will save the whole of mankind. You may never have seen an ark before. You may never have heard of an ark before. But when you come to join Noah, you help him build the ark. When the disciples came to Jesus, they didn't come and preach another Jesus. You see, so sometimes you have an idea. But if you are going to do ministry, you learn how to bury your own agenda. Because some of the things you do may not be part of the ministry. Nehemiah is a man who is described as very inventive and resilient. And when we look at his historical and social setting, there's a striking relevance for today. We can learn and apply in terms of his doctrine of God, his passion for scripture, his experience of prayer, and his example of leadership. The book of Nehemiah tells us or introduces him as an adult serving in the Persian royal court as the personal cupbearer to King Artaxerxes, or Artaxerxes, wherever you want to pronounce it. Now, this prestigious position reveals something about Nehemiah's upright character. For you, as somebody who has been captured in captivity, to become the armor bearer or the cupbearer of a king means that you have earned trust. Means that you have worked your way up. You are not lazy. You have proven over years that you can remain. And when other people were going back to Jerusalem after exile, he was still interested in staying and keeping his position. And I believe that the king didn't want to let him go. And whilst, however, he's in the court of Shushan, Nehemiah is informed that Jerusalem, his beloved country, doesn't have walls. And he resolves to restore them. Listen carefully. Nehemiah is not in Jerusalem, but he's committed to Jerusalem. That is an amazing trend. You may not be physically here, but you are committed to the vision of building powerhouse. You see, don't pursue your own agenda. And some people, immediately they leave this place, they forget that there is an agenda and there is a powerhouse of which you are a member. So even if you are not physically here, and there are people who are not physically here, but they believe in us. And many things that sometimes we don't do, they do. They talk about the gospel. They are waiting for a Bible verse, a prayer every morning. They are sending it around the world. They are announcing to people everywhere, there is a church in Powerhouse. They are doing international global outreach. And there are people here who will never even talk about the church. So your physical presence is good, but there is something called kingdom advancement. Don't just be around and not do anything. Like I said, it may be something small to start with, but do it. Because that is how you strengthen our hands. That is a divine pattern for ministry. That is how God has said that there is a man of God, there are people committed to him, but they will rally resources, both human and capital, to complete an assignment. So Nehemiah, even though he's not physically in Jerusalem, he resolves that I will come and I will build the walls of Jerusalem, despite opposition of Israel's enemies. And he brings a reformation in conformity with the laws of Moses. So let's quickly sum up what Nehemiah does. Chapter 1. Many Jews had returned from the Babylonian captivity. They were rebuilding Jerusalem, but Nehemiah was burdened. He was burdened. Everybody say burden. You see, Nehemiah carried a burden. And that is one of the things that makes a ministry. What burden do you carry? What problem do you want to solve? What is your burden for this church? What do you want to see in this church that is not working? That is your ministry. I want to see more people come to church. I want to see more ushers. I want to see more protocol people. I want to see more people in the choir. I want the church to expand. There is a burden. Something that you can identify with, that this is my burden I want to see in the church. And though he's living far away from Jerusalem, he communicated with those that were living there. And he fasted, he mourned, and he prayed. He travailed for the rebuilding of the walls of his beloved city. So he's not physically here. He's somewhere else, but he's praying for the building of the walls. You know, as a pastor, I've become less judgmental. Because people can be far away, but they have a burden and they are praying. They are travailing. And so it is not just, it is beyond what you physically see. And that is why trying to be physically visible every time may be a sign of competition and something. Because not every part of the body is visible. There are intestines, there are things you don't see, but they function well. Pray. You are home. You say, Pastor, what can I do? Because of my job and because of where I stay, I can't come to church every day. But every day from 6 to 8, you are praying for the church. Every week you fast for the church. So there's a burden you carry, which allows you to strengthen us and to hold our hands up. Because God needs somebody to be praying. In Nehemiah's prayer, he confesses to God that he knows that what is happening in Israel is the cause of the nation, is Israel's sins that has caused the nation to be scattered. And Nehemiah prays. He doesn't deny that God's punishment is necessary. However, he calls upon the mercy of God to help them rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. In chapter 2, Nehemiah now works as the cupbearer to the Persian king. After Nehemiah's great grief could no longer be hidden, he appears before the king, who sees that there's something wrong with my cupbearer. I've never seen him like this. All of a sudden, the guy is not happy. And that's a dangerous thing. To try and serve a king in those days and be unhappy will cost you your life. But Nehemiah goes to the king. He can no longer hide what is happening. And so Nehemiah responds and tells him that his beloved city is destroyed and is in ruins. He asked permission to go and help build the city. And not only did the king give him permission, the king also gave him resources he needed to accomplish the task. So you see, Nehemiah is in a position, he doesn't sit down. He now uses his influence and says, listen, king, you have some resources I don't have. And I'm going to ask and I'm going to beg of you to release some of those resources because there's a building of the broken walls of Jerusalem that must be done. Sometimes your influence you may not have yourself, but there are people around you who have that you can use your influence. You see, you work in a place where you can use your influence to bring a supply of a certain goods to help maybe people in this ministry in Choco. You work in a factory that maybe produces something. By the grace of God, you stand up and you advance the kingdom. Not everybody stands here to pray. And not everybody stands here to preach like I'm preaching. But everybody has influence. So Nehemiah says, I'm not in the position as I am just for nothing. I have access to a king who by his authority and by his word can release resources. So he goes to the king. And not only did the king give him permission, the king also gave him resources he needs to accomplish the purpose. So look at it. He has a burden. The burden leads him to fasting and prayer. And out of the fasting and prayer, he stands before a king, and his influence is going to open doors. The king, in addition, grants military troops, horsemen, and letters of passage, and even material for Nehemiah to use. Along the way, the news of Nehemiah's return becomes known to the enemies of Israel. Particularly important in the story are Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite, and Geshem the Arabian. They have vowed to stop Nehemiah and the Jews from rebuilding the city. And we are introduced to opposition. That every calling and every ministry will have challenges. But you see, God knows there are challenges, but he still gave you a ministry. And that is why he says to Archippus, take heed. Don't let anything stop you. You must fulfill it. There'll be opposition, there'll be challenges, there'll be trying times, but fulfill it. Fulfill it. You see, you will not have an excuse when you stand before God. You must fulfill it. I know things are difficult. I know you don't have money in your pocket. I know work is pulling your time, but you must fulfill your ministry. Up to this point, Nehemiah has not divulged his whole intent for even going to Jerusalem. And apparently those around him thought he was just returning for a visit. But one night while everybody's sleeping, Nehemiah wakes up and begins to walk around the city and determine everything that was necessary to do the work of rebuilding the walls. And then he shares his plan with the Jews around him. In chapter 3, we see Nehemiah setting various men and families in charge of different portions of the project. Instead of one large project, Nehemiah controls every worker and breaks it into different groups and says that these people must build this side of the wall and that people must build that side of the wall. That's why we have departments. Maybe you can build the prayer warriors. Somebody can build the children. Somebody can build the ashes. Somebody can build the choir. Everybody is building something, and eventually the whole wall is joined together. In chapter 4, the project seems to go well until it was about half complete. Then the enemy became more aggressive and more worried. And they tried to descend on Jerusalem to fight them physically. But Nehemiah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, they prayed to God for safety. They prepared for battle. When Sanballat, Tobiah, and all their allies saw that the Jews were prepared for battle, they backed off their attack. And sometimes you need to be violent and aggressive to stop certain attacks around you. Because sometimes people come and try and intimidate you to make you stop the work. But when they see that, Charlie, you are resilient and you are prepared to fight back to defend what you have, they back off. So don't think that nobody will try to attack you because you are working in ministry. So Nehemiah and the Israelites worked with a trowel in one hand and a sword in the other. Half of them were prepared for war, while half of them continued the work of strengthening the walls that were necessary for the protection of Jerusalem. Through the completion of the project, the Jews within the walls were never relaxed enough even to sleep. They wore their working clothes and fighting clothes constantly, except when they had to be washed. So you find an attitude, we are prepared to die to finish this assignment. Initially, it was not their assignment, it was Nehemiah. But after a while, all of them had the same mind. We will defend it. We want to see the completion of this assignment. So all of them are not called to build the ark. But at the end of the day, they all rise up and build the ark. And they say, we don't care what it takes, because when we enter the ark, we will all be protected. You see, it doesn't matter whether I die or I perish. Esther rises up and says, if I die, I die. If I perish, I perish. Because at the end of the day, if I speak, all of us will benefit. Can you see the bigger picture from the little you do? That you are in the choir, you are in the ashes, you are in a place of influence, you are working in a position where maybe you can speak. Can you understand what it will do? So, for you, your only position may be one day, I told you about a certain church where one person just writes a check. All the pastors go to sleep. That's all he does. He himself never preaches. Peter had a boat. Jesus wanted to preach. All Peter did was he gave Jesus the boat, and Jesus sat in the boat and preached. You see, what can you give for the advancement of the kingdom? What can you do for the advancement of the kingdom? What can you do to make Jesus Christ preach and save mankind? And the Bible says, if you don't learn how to do it, your house shall remain desolate. Isn't it sad that you are growing and you are increasing in things, but a man's life does not consist in the abundance of things? There is a work. There is a work to be done. And I want to bring you all back to the work of ministry, especially as we prepare to enter 2023. There is a work you must do, and you must find it and do it. So in Nehemiah chapter 5, okay, it continues, Nehemiah chapter 5, number 6, etc., etc. But let's now go to the Bible and read a few biblical accounts. Nehemiah chapter 1. Okay? I've just summed it up for you, but I want us to now read and notice particular portions of scripture that all of us must pay heed to. Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 1. Let's read to verse 3 together. 1 to go. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah. And it came to pass in the month Chisleu, in the 20th year, as I was in Shushan the palace, that Hanani, one of my brethren, came, he and certain men of Judah, and I asked them concerning the Jews that had escaped, which were left of the captivity, and concerning Jerusalem. Then in verse 3, and they said unto me, the remnant that are left of the captivity there in the province are in great affliction and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem also is broken down, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. When was the last time you asked about the state of the church? When was the last time you asked about the state of your department? You know, some people are working in a department, they don't care. In fact, when they go to school, they will never ask. When they travel, they will never ask. They never ask questions. If you want to find out and carry a burden, start asking questions. You see, and ask questions not because you want to mock or you want to laugh at the state, but because genuinely you want the ashes to do well. You want the prayer ministry to do well. You want the choir to do well. You want the projection team to do well. You want the church to do well. You want the women to do well. You want the instrumentalists to do well. Ask. You want to find your ministry starts by asking questions. I remember many years ago, there was a woman, forgive me, who came to church. She's not a member of the church. And she said something. She said, Pastor, I've been watching you every day coming, and I never see you eating. So she said, what do you eat at lunchtime? Of course, I didn't accept her food. But I was surprised that somebody who is not a member of the church will come and say, Pastor, what do you... Just ask. Just ask. There are people who never ask questions. So how do you buy these things? How do you pay electricity? Pastor, how do you pay workers? You see, a burden starts with you asking right questions. How can I help? So if you don't ask questions, it is because you don't have ministry or you don't care, or you think you are independent, or you are detached. You may be coming to church, but you are detached. You are not doing the work of ministry. We have concluded that everybody is called into ministry. Ask questions. And when he asked the questions, he got an answer. The remnant that are left of the captivity, they are in great affliction and reproach. And the walls of Jerusalem also is broken down, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. Verse 4. Then look at the priority, which we spoke about. And it came to pass when I heard these words, that I sat down and I wept, and I mourned certain days, and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Because of he understood what is happening. Immediately he went into prayer and fasting. He is not physically there, but look at his prayer. Look at his fasting. I'm not physically in church with you, Pastor, but I'm praying and fasting for you. Pastor, because of where I live and because of where I am. Interestingly, you see that when we are fasting, there are people outside the country who are fasting with us. They are not physically here, but some of them identify with a burden and they are fasting. When COVID came, there were many people who were not even directly involved in certain areas, but from where they were, they had compassion and they sent resources. But there are people who are here who don't ask questions and who don't care. It starts with a caring heart. Do you care about the kingdom? Are you passionate about the kingdom? Are you concerned about how many people are born again and come to church? Are you concerned about how many people are saved every Sunday? Whether they are first-time visitors coming. Does somebody have that burden? When I heard those words, I sat down and I wept. And I mourned certain days and fasted. You see, most people only mourn and weep when there's a funeral. But other people mourn and weep for the kingdom. What fuels you? What saddens you? Souls are dying and going to hell. And sometimes we will move from here and travel to Jelukope to go and bury a dead body. But other people are traveling and mourning for the church. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And said, I beseech thee, verse 5, O Lord God of heaven, the great and terrible God that keepeth covenant and mercy for them that love him and observe his commandments. So all of a sudden you see a priority. He's working as a cupbearer, but he says there's something bigger than my position. There's something bigger than my personal interest. I don't live there. I don't care. It's not affecting me directly. My children are living outside the country, but I carry a burden for kingdom advancement. My children don't live in Choco, but what happens in Choco affects me. My children are not members of the ashes, or I'm not a member of the choir, but I'm interested in what happens in the choir. Because I carry a burden, and I ask questions. You see, you've got to learn how to do ministry. Is to take an active interest in what is happening in the body. So God has found a man who is not willing to stand in the gap. He has looked and looked and looked. The people in Jerusalem who are living with the broken walls, they themselves, they don't care. But somebody who is in Shushan, far away, God has found a man. And sometimes that is why God will pick somebody who doesn't stay with you. and bring him to come and help you. Because the people who live around you have become very casual. You are living with broken walls in their ashes. And then God will bring somebody from afar and come and build their ashes. You are in the choir. You are aloof. You are in the sound department. You are bluffing. And then God will bring somebody from afar with a burden to come and solve problems. When God finds a gap, when God finds a man to stand in the gap, people are not destroyed. Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 2. After the priority and the motivation is not personal. The motivation is the kingdom. The motivation is not self-exaltation. The motivation is the kingdom. The motivation is not, I want to do something for everybody to see me and also know that I'm there. The motivation is the bigger picture. The bigger picture. Wherefore the king, verse 2, wherefore the king said unto me, why is thy countenance sad, seeing you are not sick? This is nothing else but sorrow of heart. Then I was so afraid, verse 3, and said unto the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad, when the city, the place of my father's tombs, lies waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire? Then the king said unto me, why do you make this request? So I prayed to the God of heaven. Wow. And I said unto the king, if it please the king, and if thy servant has found favor in thy sight, let me send unto Judah the city of my father's tombs, that I may build it. And the king said unto me, the queen also sitting by him, for how long shall thy journey be? And when will thou return? It's like the king says, don't just go, I want you to come back. I know what you are going to do is important, but you go and do it, come back to me. So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. Moreover, I said unto the king, if it please the king, let letters be given unto me to the governors beyond the river, that they may convey me over till I come into Judah. You see the influence. Using his influence to serve the kingdom. Using his influence to rally resources. Using who he is to make sure that there is kingdom advancement. And a letter, and I sent, verse 8. And a letter unto Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the palace, which are pertain to the house, and for the wall of the city, and for the house that I shall enter into. And the king granted me according to the good hand of my God upon me. Then I came to the governors beyond the river, and gave them the king's letters. Now the king has sent captains of the army and horsemen with me. So you can see the burden, you can see the risks, you can see the influence. Why are you here? Why are you in the kingdom for such a time as this? To show off your new house? To show off your new car? All your privileges, that's what you're using it for? Another house, another car, another iPhone, another wife, another toilet seat. No. Can I caution all of you? Can I? Oh, encourage me small, can I? As you grow. You see, when you are born and you are young, you have a lot of years. But as you grow, you are nearer death. Isn't it? So I want to ask you, if you died today, what would you have done for the kingdom? Life is more than just an extra house or another car. In fact, when I read the story of Jesus Christ, he didn't have a house. You see, one of the greatest leaders in Africa, Kwame Nkrumah, show me his house. I want you to look at Apostle Paul. And I'm not saying houses are not important. That's not what I'm saying. But there must be moderation, because this earth is not our home. This world is not our home. So don't judge a ministry by cars and houses of the pastor. John the Baptist was virtually naked in the deserts, and yet he's called the greatest prophet. I don't want you to look at me and judge me by what I wear and what car I drive. In fact, one of the things I learned early was not to allow people to judge me by the external. Because there's much more to life. That's why I said ministry, it starts from the inside. Buy a car, buy a house, but remember, there's also ministry. And the only thing that will outlive you is your ministry. When Jesus died, they remembered his ministry. Noah is dead, we are still talking about the ark. Abraham is gone, but we are still talking about his work. Let's come to verse 10 of the same chapter. When Sanballat, everybody says Sanballat. When Sanballat the Horonite, look at the name like a horror story. When Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, the head of it, is grieved them exceedingly that there was come a man to seek the welfare of the children of Israel. Opposition has started. There's ministry. God has found a man who has used his influence and rallied everything. He's come to do a good work. Who told you that everybody who's doing a good work will be appreciated? In fact, in this world, what I've seen is that people who usually stand up for the right things are not appreciated. We killed Kwame Nkrumah. We exiled him. Kwame Nkrumah, the greatest president of Africa, the millennium president. What did we do to him? You are going to vote. The good people who come to you, make a decision. Now, as for me, my family tradition is this. Let me wait till next year before I start preaching about politics. Because good people will come to you. And sometimes we have Jesus and Barabbas. And to the shock of everybody, we choose Barabbas and kill Jesus. But ministry is about choosing and doing the right. Nehemiah has left everything. You see, I'm very convinced that after all that I've left, not all of you will appreciate what I do here. After all that I've left, all these years of sacrificing, sometimes what I get are rather insults. Let's stop there. So anytime you start a ministry, you say that I'm in the choir, I'm going to do this, I'm going to start this, I'm carrying a burden, I'm going to do this. You find out that the Bible said there were people who were angry. So some people profit from the status quo. Some people are happy that the walls of Jerusalem are broken. Let me give you another example in a place like this. You see, there's no water in Kolegono, but there's water. Some people are not happy that there's water because they want to profit when there's no water. So they'll cut the pipes. And then they'll set up their own tanks and sell water. So if anybody comes and says, I'm come to make sure that Kolegono has water, there will be the Sanballat and the Tobiah who will be angry because their livelihood is being threatened. So some people, when things are not working, they're happy. You go to some government of ministries. When things are not working, they can always collect something under the table. Immediately a boss comes there and says, I want to make things work. They will gather together, the Sanballat and the Horonites and the Tobias. You see, as you sit here, don't be a hindrance to ministry. Because all of you who are here, are you going to be a Sanballat or a Tobiah in the house of the Lord? Do you benefit because there's nobody who has come into your department? And when somebody comes to join your department and tries to make things work, you will leave. You won't work again. I won't do this again. Listen, understand ministry. And this morning I heard something very interesting. You see, some of us lose ministry, not because we are bad people, but because we are unfaithful. So if you look at the parable of the talents, when the master came, he took the talent of the one who didn't do anything and gave him to the 5. He gave everybody something. But one person didn't work. So by virtue of faithfulness, people who start get more and other people lose their ministries. So you were the person in the choir. You were the person who was supposed to do a particular job, but you didn't do it. You didn't stand well, and God took it from you and gave it to another person and cast you out. Because one of the requirements about ministry is faithfulness. And if you start bluffing, and if you start misbehaving, and if you start saying, I won't do it, a time will come, God will take from you. You see, he gave it to you. He will take it from you and give it to another person. So you find out that all of a sudden what you were not doing, another person has begun to do. It's called the ministry of replacements. And I've seen it. I always tell you, we are not the only people in Choko. We are not the first church who have come to Choko. If we don't fulfill assignments, God will raise up another church. You are in the choir, fulfill your assignment. You are in the prayer warriors, fulfill your assignment. You are in the ashes, fulfill your assignment. You are in the sound department, hold on to it. Fulfill it. Don't let God take it away and give it to another person to come and do what you are ordained to do. Mordecai told Esther, who knows if you have come into the kingdom for such a time as this? And if you do not speak up, God will look for another person to bring enlargement and deliverance. There are some of you here who must pay your tithe, but you find out that you don't pay. God still supplies, because God will bless somebody else who is faithful to continue giving money to the church. That is why he said, I will build my church. So I'm making a passionate call, especially for those of you who are becoming weak, to rise up. Go back to your ministries. Start thinking again. Because there comes a time the plane takes off. You are at the airport, but you can't join it. It's gone. Is somebody hear me? Is somebody hear me? It grieved them exceedingly that there was come a man to seek the welfare of the Israelites. Let's look at Nehemiah chapter 3 now. Wow. I can't believe the time is flying. So after what, you can see the transitions and the stages. In Nehemiah chapter 3, we are seeing various people who were not directly called and didn't have a burden, but they come to join the work. So let's went to look for Tobiah, the Ammonite, and they began to talk. Even that which they build, if a fox go up, he shall break it down the stone wall. They trivialize what they are doing. And so what do? You only come to church, you have nothing to do. You keep on holding the pastor's Bible. That's all you do. Oh, go with you. You, what do you do in church? We come to church, you are standing there in front like some zombie. You see, they mock. They ridicule. And you, big man, why are you following that small boy? They mock. They ridicule. And you are too old to be in the choir. Can't see that the choir is full of young people. All the choir people, you went to school, leave them and see, they mock. They ridicule. And they destroy people's ministries. You cry, aren't you better than them? Look at him, he has come. Leave him, leave him. They mock. They ridicule. There are many people who, because of mocking and ridicule, have thrown away the ministry. But God says, say to Archippus. Say to Archippus. Take heed. Once from me, I want to join a band that has illiterates and this. You see, the mockery sometimes. Look at verse 4. Hear, O our God, for we are despised, and turn their reproach upon their own head, and give them for a prey in the land of captivity. Can you imagine this prayer? All of a sudden, Nehemiah rises up. God, look at how they despise us. Turn their reproach upon their own head. Give them for a prey in the land of captivity, and cover not their iniquity, and let their sin be blotted out from before thee, for they have provoked thee to anger before the builders. There are people building who are struggling to make the thing work. And there are people who are provoking, and there's a prayer that is prayed over them. You see, I told you, there's a lot that goes on that affects human lives. Because some people are mocking. I have better things to do. You have nothing to do. That's why you keep going. And they say it behind us, and they mock. You think that the choir is for me? No. I have better things to do. And they mock. They mock before the builders. But look at verse 6. Verse 5, sorry. Verse 6. Verse 6, it says, so built we the wall, and the wall was joined together unto the half thereof, for the people had a mind. You see, in spite of the persecutions, in spite of the mocking, in spite of the opposition, in spite of the fact that they were not the people who had been called and Nehemiah had come, they had a mind, they had a mindset, we will work. In spite of the challenges of life, they had a mindset, we will work. Today I want to pray for you that you'll have a mindset. Because some of you, when they say a mindset, it's like concrete that has become hard. It's soft. You see, some of you, your mind hasn't set. But when it sets, nothing can move it. I've made up a mind to be in ministry. My mind is made up to serve God till I die. It's not something I'm thinking about or I'm playing. Oh, when I travel, then I'll stop becoming a Christian. No. Oh, if I get an opportunity, I go to Dubai. Then if I get a job, I'll stop coming. Oh, now I can't come because, you see, and you start backsliding. Because your mind is not set about ministry. It says that they had a mindset. May God help me make up my mind that I will build a wall in spite of opposition. That in spite of the difficulties of Choko, we will build a ministry. In spite of the fact that we are not appreciated and there are enemies that we will not stop, we will continue and we will build it because we must be careful to fulfill our ministry. When I was a young man as a student, there was a song we used to sing at the stadium. Were you far? She were here for. Now were you? We're not a lot. We didn't have popular fans, but we were here. Yaba. So built we the wall. Because the people had a mind to work. What is your mind about the choir? Pastor, I'm just doing it today. I'm not sure. Anything can move you away from the work. What is your mind about power? I come because it's my uncle's church, so I have to try and help him. I come because I like the pastor. I come because I don't have a job. You see, you haven't made up your mind. There are too many circumstantial things that are influencing your presence here. And when those circumstances change, you change. But there are people who are hardcore. We have a mind. And if God promotes me, I will serve him more. If circumstances change, I will still serve and stand with Pastor Bernard. See, that's the mindset. This morning I got a message from somebody from CTFM. And he had quoted a passage that I preached. I think I was preaching on the man of God. And he said, the more God blesses us, the more we'll serve him. I said, wow. I preached this message many years ago. I wish a church member had quoted it to me. But there are people, the more God blesses you, you become the nobles of Tekoa. Who said our faith is for poor people and people who don't have jobs? Why do you give people an impression like that? By your attitude. That when you don't have a job and you don't have anything to do, then you can be a serious Christian. No. Then you can come. And when you come, you don't do anything. You just come and walk around. What is your burden? What problem do you solve in this church? The ministry of Nehemiah, the template, you can see clearly. God called him. He wasn't even there. He comes to a people whom he doesn't know. Yet he rallies them and rallies resources. And he's able to convince them and says, let us build the walls. And when they start building the walls, there's Takashi and there's fighting. But he says, we will build. I've come into the kingdom for such a time as this. I must fulfill it. I must fulfill it. Because of time, I just end with this final verse. We'll look at the other parts maybe during the week and how to fight as you build. Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 17. Quickly. Nehemiah chapter 2. Okay, let's look at verse 20 and we close with that. My time is up. Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 20. Why do we make up our minds to work? Why do some people have a strong conviction about the work of God? Because our labor is never in vain. There are many people who think that, there are other things that are more profitable than the work of God. But our labor in the Lord is not in vain. So look at Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 20. What fueled their decision in spite of opposition, in spite of danger, in spite of other things to be done? Because if you've gone into a city after an exile, you are thinking of your own house and not the walls of Jerusalem. But they thought of the walls. Because when they are protected, then the houses they've built will be safe. But if you build a nice house where the walls are broken and you are attacked, they will attack your house. So in Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 20, then answered I and said unto them, everybody say them. You see, there are some people you must speak to. There are some people who are asking questions you must answer. And you need to be able to stand and say unto them. You don't keep quiet when they talk. You don't keep quiet and listen to their nonsense. They are saying things, they are mocking. Then answered I and said to them, when I was a child, I had nothing, but you give me time. Today I'm nothing, but just give me a time. As I do and I labor in the work of the Lord, just watch me. Just watch me. All the men of God that are being criticized today, Archbishop Duncan Williams, Dr. Tabo, when they were children, who looked at them? Today, by the grace of God, they worked hard. Everybody's insulting them. God has blessed them. Just give us time. Just give us time. When God has finished blessing us, people are angry. But they never see us when we are fighting oppositions. They never see us when we are laboring and gathering resources. They never see us when we are preaching like I'm preaching today and sweating. Then answered I and said unto them, the God of heaven, we're not talking about earthly things, that this work we do, there's a God of heaven. It's not God of Mankisim. It's not God of Ghana. The God of heaven, he will prosper us. I don't know where your prosperity is coming from, but I know a God who can connect things and favor me suddenly. Today I'm a prisoner, but tomorrow I'm stepping up in the palace. Today I'm an ordinary shepherd boy with nothing, with no CV, but tomorrow I'm stepping into my palace because the God of heaven, he will prosper us. Therefore, he will win. That is why we labor, we arise. That is why we join the choir. That is why we go on outreach. That is why we pray. That is why we use our influence, because there's a God of heaven who other people don't know about, but we know him. He will prosper us. Therefore, we his servants, we won't sit down. Chobwe, we will arise. You see, the word arise means stand up and be noticed in the crowd. Everybody's sitting down now. Bonzi, arise. All of a sudden, it becomes visible. It means you are going to see me do the work. I'm not going to hide under the canopy of the church. I'm going to arise. You are going to see me in the ashes, and I'm going to be prominent. You are going to see my labor, that I'm the one who makes it happen, that I come every day and arrange chairs. I'm going to arise. Therefore, we his servants will arise, and we will build. You see, a building is not a haphazard something. A building is a very intentional, deliberate structure of addition. Just give us time. Just give us time. Therefore, we his servants, we will arise and we will build. Therefore, we his servants will arise and we will build. If there's something I'm more convinced about now as I grow older, like Moses, give me more mountains. Like Joshua, we've done a lot, but Father, give me more mountains. The more I grow, the more I pursue the work. The more it will be foolish to grow and leave the work and now pursue things. No. I pray for this church that the longer we stay and the more we grow. You see, there will be challenges. That one, when you join a department, there will be challenges. There will always be Sambalat and Tobias and all those things. They will be there. Some will mock, some will frustrate you. But don't be a noble who doesn't put your hand to the work. So there were people who were not working at all. There were people who were opposing the work. But there was another group who said, as for us, it doesn't matter. We will hold a sword in one hand and we'll build with the other hand. We are working in an office, but we'll continue to work in the Lord. We are married, but we'll hold marriage in one hand. We'll continue the work of the ministry in one hand. It's sad to see people, as they grow up a little bit, begin to deviate. Hold on to ministry. Hold on to ministry. hold on to ministry. And so today, our prayer is very simple. Father, give us a mind to work. Shall we rise on our feet? Lift up your hands. The God of heaven, He will prosper us. Father, give me a mind to work. Give me that mindset. Let me work. Let me be called a worker in the house of the Lord. Let me fulfill my ministry. Some of you can work in soul winning. Some of you can work in prayer. I taught you last week. Some of you can work in finance. Some of you can work in the ministry of helps, just supporting. Work. Work. God, give me a mindset. God, help me not to think of myself more highly than I ought to think of. Help me not to mock the work. Help me not to despise the work. Help me to work hard. Help me to labor. Send me out as a laborer, Father. Help me to use my position, my influence, my opportunities, my privilege to advance the kingdom. Father, help me. Help me, Lord. Help me, Lord. And so this morning I lift up my hands. Lift up your hands, everybody, as a sign of surrender and yearning. And I say, Lord, use me. Use me, Lord. If you are looking for a man, if you are looking for a vessel, I am here. Give me a burden for ministry. Give me a burden for the work. Give me a burden for the work. Help me rally resources, both human and financial, to support the man of God. If you're a member of this church, your assignment is to help me, is to stand with me. Not your own ideas, not what you think. You may be doing a good thing, but does it help the vision that God has given to me? Why do we give money? Why do we go on outreach? Why are there people who pray for the church? Why are there people who come and usher and clean the place and hold microphones and all that? It is because we want to help. We want to help. Father, help me, give me a mindset to do the work. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Thou, O Lord, art a shield about me. You are my glory. You are the lifter of my head. Thou, O Lord, art a shield about me. You are my glory. You are the lifter of my head. Father, let it be that in this place there shall be a stirring up for work. That it shall be our shield and our glory. Remove every reproach from us as a people. And let your glory, the spirit of glory, rest and abide with us. Let your people prosper. Let this mindset, the God of heaven, He will prosper us. Be our shield, be our glory. Father, open doors because of the work of the ministry. Open doors for us into places where people struggle to go. Give us unrestricted access to finances and to territories. I give you worship and I give you praise. In Jesus' mighty name. And everybody said, Amen.